Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. Throw away because I don't want this traced back to me. I, 34 female, have been married to my husband, let's call him Jim, 37 male, for 7 years. We have always agreed to be child-free, and I also have PCOS, which makes having kids difficult anyway. His family is very wealthy, and from the beginning, my mother-in-law has been upset about our decision. She desperately wanted an heir to carry on the family name and has always blamed me, thinking I convinced him not to have kids. I didn't. This was a mutual decision from the start. About a year ago, I found out Jim was having an affair with an intern at his company. I only found out because the woman sent me messages out of nowhere. Turns out she was pregnant with his child. I was devastated. I confronted Jim and I was very close to leaving him. However, he apologized profusely, and after a lot of discussions, we decided to try and make it work. But I had one condition. I would never be involved with the child. I didn't want to see the kid or interact with them, and he agreed. Jim pays child support and has weekend visitation, but all of this happens outside of our home. Recently, my mother-in-law found out about the grandkid, and she went absolutely nuts with excitement. She's been visiting the baby regularly, which is fine. I don't care what she does on her own time. But yesterday, she showed up at our door with the baby in tow. I knew immediately what she was trying to do. She tried to enter the house, saying she was there to see her son and his child together. I closed the door on her and told her she wasn't coming in with the baby. She called my phone while standing outside the door, saying I need to grow up and let the child in, because he has a right to be in his daddy's house. And I was only delaying the inevitable because her son would one day bring him home. She said that this is the child's house too, and that he would inherit it one day. So I'm the outsider here, and it was I who should be standing outside. I was so upset and called Jim crying. He came home and diffused the situation, but not before inviting mother-in-law and the baby inside to discuss boundaries. But honestly, it was more like him and his mom cooing over the baby while I stood there feeling like a third wheel. I couldn't take it anymore, so I left the house. Now Jim wants me to come back home. He says his mom was wrong, but that my stance on never letting the child into our home is also wrong. He says it's unrealistic and that I need to be more understanding that he's a father now. So am I the a-hole for not letting my mother-in-law bring my husband's love child into our home and sticking to my boundary? Edit. I should clarify a few things. The house we live in is actually owned by Jim. It's an ancestral home, vast, luxurious, and has been in his family for generations. There's also a prenup, which his mom insisted on before we got married, so I have no claim to the house. I'm realizing now that this is what mother-in-law was subtly referring to when she said the baby would inherit the house, and that if anyone has to leave, it should be me. I'm starting to see that this marriage may no longer be working, but I haven't been ready to fully admit that to myself. I've been trying to hold on to what we have left, but I can't ignore how things have changed and how little control I have in all of this. Mother-in-law has never liked me and always blamed me for ruining her dreams of a big family. This feels like another one of her power moves, and Jim seems caught in the middle. Or maybe he's choosing a side, and I just don't want to see it. Update. If anybody remembers my post, here's a brief update. Jim and I had a long, serious discussion after I made that post. It was emotional and difficult, but I finally ended things. Jim was devastated, but I need to protect myself and my peace. I moved out shortly after. It's been incredibly sad and heartbreaking, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. I've hired a lawyer and we're drawing up divorce papers. That's how I discovered this interesting fact. My lawyer reviewed our prenup and discovered it has an infidelity clause. Because Jim cheated, the prenup is now null and void, which means I can now contest for half of his wealth. And I'm sure Jim is aware of this now. I suspect that's a big reason why he didn't want a divorce and why he's still trying to be overly gentle and nice with me. Part of me wants to be petty and go after his ancestral house, especially after the way mother-in-law treated me. However, my lawyer advised against it because given the house's status as an ancestral property, it would likely lead to a long, drawn-out court battle and might even settle in their favor. Instead, I'm going to focus on other assets and financial compensation that would be more straightforward to claim. As for mother-in-law, she is furious. She's been calling me every name in the book and trying to stir up drama. I'm sure she's just seeing red at the thought of me walking away with a good chunk of the family's wealth. But honestly, I'm done caring what she thinks. I'm finally looking out for myself, and it's a relief to be moving forward. Thank you to everyone who gave me the push I needed to see things clearly. This isn't where I want to be in my life at my age, but it's where I ended up. It's sad, but I feel hopeful of future in a way I've never felt before. Story 2. Am I the a-hole for refusing to reimburse my sister after she left her Invisalign out? I'm 31 female, my sister S is 32 female, and our parents are 50s, male and female, and my kids are 7 male and 5 female. S lives with our parents in the big, expensive city where we are from. There's no financial or cultural reason for that. She makes a good salary as a consultant and could easily afford to pay market rent somewhere. She just prefers to live at home and spend her money on handbags and vacations. I live about 2 hours away in a much cheaper town but return for the holidays with my kids every year. As anyone who has kids knows, this is the age where they get into everything. S had to work yesterday, and unfortunately, my kids got into her room. If you haven't seen Invisaligns before, they look like plastic toys for Halloween. She left the Invisalign box in plain sight on a shelf in her closet, which was left open. My kids got into them and began playing with them, putting them in their mouths, etc. I stopped them when I found out and tried to put the Invisaligns in the little baggies, but S came home and immediately freaked out. She started screaming and throwing a fit, scaring my kids. S demanded I reimburse her for the Invisaligns, which cost almost $4,000. By no means do I intend to do this. That's an absurd cost, and S doesn't even really need them. My parents, per usual, take her side and think I'm the a-hole. So am I the a-hole? Edit. I'm pregnant and was napping. Additionally, kids get into boxes, especially around the holidays. She could have hidden it or put it on a higher shelf where they couldn't reach. My kids feel terrible and cried after her freak out. My 5-year-old is worried that Santa hates her. They know they messed up. Also, it's not just me who thinks it's unnecessary. Basically, everyone, including my parents, thinks the Invisalign is dumb. She already had braces and has mostly straight teeth. She's just image obsessed. You're 100% responsible for this situation. It doesn't matter if your sister lives at home, what she spends her money on, or whether you think her Invisalign is necessary. It's her property and your kids damaged it. You should have been supervising them, especially since you know they're at an age where they get into things. Saying that your sister should have hidden the Invisalign or put it on a higher shelf is ridiculous. She shouldn't have to child-proof her own room in her own home. You're responsible for the damages and you should reimburse her. The fact that your parents are siding with her should be a clear sign that you're in the wrong. Now for some comments. You're the ass. She left it out in her room in a box in her closet. You're wrong, it's your job to supervise your kids. Hey, I get it. Spilling a glass of juice in the kitchen is a normal thing for a guest to do while taking normal precautions. Or even tripping and knocking over a vase, or if she left them on the floor of the living room and they got stepped on. But just like playing ball in the house is not taking normal care, neither is letting them go into her room and get things out of her closet. You're the a-hole. You're only defending yourself because you don't want to pay $4,000 and don't want any responsibility. They are your kids. You need to take responsibility for what they do because you're their mother. You use the excuse that they're kids. They're going to explore and break things, but clearly you don't teach your kids not to go through adults' things and their bedrooms when visiting someone's house. I've never entered my grandparents', uncles' or aunts' bedrooms as a kid without permission or an adult, and vice versa for any of my young cousins. You're the a-hole and you keep arguing you're not, which makes you more the a-hole. Story 3. Am I the a-hole for packing game console on hospital bag for the labor and delivery for my wife? My wife's currently 38 weeks pregnant for our second baby, and the due date is late December, so really we're expecting any day now. Last night, while she was packing the hospital bag, I put my Nintendo Switch and the charger in the bag. She looked at me so offended, like I just sacrificed our firstborn. She said, "Excuse me?" And I said, "What?" She then started berating me about not being present and won't concentrate during the labor, but rather on the game. I said, "Well, we don't know how long she's gonna be in labor for, since for our first baby she was in labor for 40 hours. I didn't leave her side at all for our first until the three of us could leave the hospital, and intending to do the same for our second. There will probably be a lot of downtime, and it can be boring. Our daughter will be with her parents, so it's not like I have to watch her." I also said, "What's the difference with playing games on my phone?" And she said it's the intention, and she left the room. She's still giving me cold shoulder till now. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for wanting to bring a game console while my wife is giving birth to our daughter? Your wife is about to go through one of the most intense, painful, and emotionally charged experiences a person can have again. She needs your support, presence, and focus, not for you to be distracted by a game console. The fact that she had a 40-hour labor with your first child means she needs even more emotional and physical support this time around, not less. The labor and delivery process isn't just boring downtime. It's about being prepared to jump in whenever your wife needs you, to support her through pain, stress, and any possible complications. Put yourself in her shoes and think about how you can be better. Support her instead of looking for ways to entertain yourself. Leave the Switch at home and focus on being the best partner you can be during this important moment. Now for some comments. You're the a-hole. You're there for her. There shouldn't be any moment when you are checked out of what's happening with her enough to focus on a game. A second labor is quite likely to be much faster and much less of what you're referring to as a downtime. And I can promise you, there was no downtime for your wife. If you need to bring entertainment, why not a tablet so that you can both watch something on Netflix or whatever, so that you're both engaged with one another? And what's happening? People get way more absorbed in games than they do in, say, books or magazines. If my husband is playing on his Switch, I just assume he's not there for 20 or 30 minutes, and I see that often when people are gaming. It's just really hard to get someone's attention when they're immersed in a difficult level or something. I wouldn't want that in the room with me while giving birth, so I think she's a little more than in the right than you are. Pack a National Geographic or something. But in the end, I think it's more her call.